Hello, this is Peter Bell, and I'm here with Mr. Tim Froude from Sokoman Corp. Hello, Tim.
Oh, hi, Peter.
Wonderful to have you. First time talking with you. Very impressed. Everything I've seen in the market and heard about the company, which is actually very little. I tend to put my fingers in my ears when a stock does something like yours has done recently. Appreciate the chance to get some info on the story from you here today.
Oh, no problem, Peter. Yes, it has been quite a ride for the past couple of weeks, undoubted.
Have you ever been involved in anything quite like this before?
No, certainly not this fast. I have been involved in the past with the stock that went from pennies to $4 back in the uranium days, and that was quite fun. The listing on the Amex and ringing the bell in New York and all that good stuff. So, but this is a little more personal here. This is a special project.
Well, and you are a newfie yourself, and the project that you have in this company is in Newfoundland. There's an absolute gold rush going on out there right now, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, just to give you an idea of how full circle this has come, I was actually born 25 kilometers from this project area in the town of Grand Falls, which is on the Trans-Canada Highway, runs right through it, and the Trans-Canada runs right through the Moosehead Project. But yeah, it's so funny. I mean, we spend our careers in this business, globetrotting, and I have been a number of places, and to be able to have this success, and have a cup of tea with my mother on the same day, is quite special.
And I guess it's possible because of the wonders of geology in a way. I'm looking at a recent company presentation here, slide number 4, the big structures, big gold. That's what we want to see. And then to see Laurentia and Gondwana, Baltica, and the Dog Bay line marked on it. I've poked around a little bit the geological history of this area, and absolutely fascinating stuff.
Yeah, Newfoundland is a special place geologically. In fact, parts of it have actually achieved, UNESCO World Heritage status for its geological presentations. And and certainly Newfoundland is linked to obviously the U.S. East Coast and Canada, as well as our cousins over across the pond, as we call it, in Ireland. I mean, the geology just rips right through, and you're correct. I mean, you need big structures to focus fluids and act as catalysts for forming significant gold deposits. We don't know how big Moosehead is going to get, but it's nice to know that we're in the same structural regime as Marathon Gold's Valentine Lake project, which sits about 150 kilometers to our southwest, and Dalradian on the other side of the pond there with their 6 million ounce gold. So I mean, you're in good company there. So I like the setting.
It's amazing to hear you mention Dalradian and Maritime in the same breath, isn't it? It's not something I'm sure some people would be, well, to begin with, I wonder how many people even know about those junior mining companies at this point. I feel like it's a pretty small audience. Maybe action like we've had with Sokoman will draw more eyes towards this niche part of the mining business.
Yeah, well, certainly, I mean, Newfoundland has always been known as a base metal producer. I mean, that's been our backbone of our mining industry for hundreds of years, and and not so much for gold. In fact, it wasn't until the late 1970s. At that point, there were something like 35 known gold occurrences on the island of Newfoundland, and most of those were associated with copper mines as a byproduct. So, but since then, and we never really had a good competitive environment for claim staking here. It was always, the ground was always broken up. The island was broken up into 4 or 5 large concessions that were granted to largely British interests, and so there was no competition, and no real incentive for those guys to do much, and certainly gold suffered as a result. So in '78, when we rewrote our mining act here and got rid of a lot of those old concessions, it allowed for competitive staking, and since then we've had over 500 new gold occurrences found. We've had several mines in production, and I think the best is yet to come. So Newfoundland's gold rush is a modern day one, as opposed to the 49ers.
Here, and in Canada of all places, ocean access, great infrastructure, all these things ahead of it.
Oh, absolutely. No, it's I mean, you can drive a car, to within 25 meters of some of our drill setups. Hole 1801, you could drive a car to within 50 meters of that. So I mean, access is, and it is a project that has some history. There has been some drilling done in the past, and those old access trails and roads are a blessing. When you don't have to cut trails yourself, it just makes it a lot easier.
And on a high level, seasonality for exploration work?
You can pretty well work year-round. You do get that snowy period kind of around Christmas and into January when you might be better off just waiting a couple of weeks. But I mean, I've seen winters where we've had a foot of snow and that's it. Yeah. One thing about the weather in Newfoundland, if you don't like it, just wait around, for 5 minutes and it'll change.
Yep, out here at Vancouver Island, I think it's the same thing.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, yes, that's right. Only you don't get the snow on Vancouver that we get here. But anyway, I mean, infrastructure is good. There's local population centers are around, the highways, the secondary roads, and just the general flat terrain. There's no difficult conditions here at all.
And I'm still looking at this map, and the longer I look at it, the more I see. I laugh to see a line called Gandaria off to the southwest here along these big structures in ancient times, and it makes me laugh thinking of the town of Gander, Newfoundland. I wonder
the Gander Zone is one of the key structural blocks of the island of Newfoundland. Interestingly enough, Newfoundland was at one time, I guess you could liken it to an accordion, with the opening and closing of old oceans, and the west coast of Newfoundland originally being, and still is obviously, attached to North America, whereas the Avalon Zone was once attached to perhaps the coast of Morocco, and with opening and closing and squeezing, and the central part are where you have all your volcanic belts and sedimentary belts that have the base metal mines and now the new gold showing. So it's a very unique geological gift we have in Newfoundland.
And the Iapetus, the main Iapetus structure there, and this old ocean. I wonder, how much does that ancient geological activity tie in with the features and structures you're seeing today, potentially exploring for? I caveat that very, very shallow holes, only one hole, below 200 meters, most of them under 100 meters, as I understand.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, the project has 110 historical holes drilled over a 10 to 15 year period under the Altius Minerals that's who we acquired the property from, a very successful exploration company based here in Newfoundland, and so they had the project with several partners who completed several rounds of drilling over the past 15, 20 years. But curiously enough, the project basically remained dormant after 2003, 2004, and it just sat dormant. Altius had a partner, a major, that basically kind of lost interest, and so their hands were tied as far as moving the project forward. So in 2014, when the claims actually expired, because here in Newfoundland, after a mineral exploration license is 20 years old, it gets canceled, or you have to convert it to a mining lease. So because they didn't have anything proven up to mine, the ground just fell open, and so Altius staked it again, reacquired it, and basically 2 years ago, did some work that highlighted possibly a very important structural observation that a lot of the high-grade gold seems to be associated with structures that kind of run parallel to a lot of the old drilling. So it may not have been the most effective drilling in the past. So certainly we're seeing the fruit of that now, I think, with our phase 1 program. With 12 more holes yet to come from the western zone, I think the 3 holes we have reported have obviously been quite exciting, and we'll see what the other holes. I'm still waiting for some assays, by the way, for the last batch, and we should have them in a couple of weeks and have it all compiled.
Yeah. Well, your MH1801 discovery hole, under 200 meters offset there from that Altius 2003 hole. Very, great picture in your presentation deck to explain that, and what you're saying about parallel. Very funny to hear. I wonder, deposit type, does this fit into a box fairly well?
Well,
Potentially.
it's been studied somewhat. There's been a few academic reports done on this that suggest it's a classic orogenic gold deposit, vein hosted, structurally controlled gold deposits, and these can be quite large, wherever they occur in the world. And that's there's not a lot we can add to that in terms of science, other than we just need to get busy and get more hits into this zone, because it's just one hole. So and interestingly enough, when we drilled that hole, we were actually targeting something much further down. We were actually targeting an intercept that Altius reported in 2003 of 278 grams over half a meter. And this was in the deepest, so there's only one hole drilled deeper than 200 meters vertically on this project. One hole. And this one hole that Altius drilled hit 278 grams over half a meter at a depth of 257 meters down the hole, or just under 200 meters, or around 200 meters vertically. So we were testing that intercept because it wasn't followed up. There was no drilling in that area after that hole. So I wanted to test it up dip, about 50 meters up dip, shallower than what Altius had hit. So I planned on hitting that about 200 meters down our hole, based on where we had set up. But we didn't quite make it there without incident. At 109 meters, we hit this very significant structural zone. It actually continued for about 80 meters down the hole past that mark. And at 115 meters is where we encountered the very high grade vein with all the nice visible gold in it. And an additional 40 meters down the hole past that, we hit another 9-meter section that graded much lower grade, 4.2 grams, but within it, I think there was 1.35 meters of about 20 grams. So this is a gold-enriched structure that previously no one really knew about. I think it's a different intercept. The lower intercept that we got in the hole may be relatable to the Altius mineralization, although the grades again are different. So I don't know if it is.
Yeah.
It may not. And where we were supposed to hit that zone up dip in this hole, we actually had a mafic dike that was altered and mineralized and ran modest amounts of gold, just a few hundred ppb. So sometimes that happens in these types of systems. You get a dike to come in along the same structures that the veins are filling, and sometimes you unfortunately hit a dike instead of the zone. So I think what we hit are new zones, possibly two subparallel zones.
Yep. And with the accordion action that would have gone on this package of rocks here over billions of years, there could be all kinds of complexity down there.
Yeah, well, they had already identified three main faults on the property: the South Pond Fault, the Discovery Fault, and the North Pond Fault. They were already documented through their previous drilling, and were actually the focus of previous drilling programs. This hole 1801 seems to have identified new structures to the east, and possibly parallel to these other three previously known structures. So it shouldn't come as a surprise that there are additional mineralized faults on this project area. In fact, we know from the work that Altius did over the years that there are unsourced boulders, high-grade boulders lying around. There's soil geochemical anomalies. And these are also targets that we intend to test fairly robustly as well when we move forward with the next phase of drilling. So we've got multiple targets here to test, not just 1801.
Yeah, no, certainly. The amount of gold out there in Newfoundland is shocking from what I've heard about it. Rivals BC maybe in some ways. I don't know that to be the case, but.
Well, we certainly haven't had the past production that say some BC mines and some current mines are currently enjoying very good success. Bruce Jack and others like that up in the north there. But I think Newfoundland will catch up. I think the Valentine Lake is a very important project, 3.1 million ounces and growing, and I think there's others, and I think Moosehead could could potentially be that. But I mean, until we get our first resource done, at what stage, I'm not quite certain if we have enough data yet to do that. But certainly with more drilling, we'll be able to put a picture together there, I think, and come up with a first resource maybe sometime in 2019. But right now the focus is just on expanding. Obviously that great hole we hit 1801, and hopefully finding new veins through our in the other holes. So
Yep.
there's a lot to look forward to here.
Well, and it's apparent in this drill hole plan map you have that the interval in 1801, much larger than the interval in the 2003 hole, hole 15 there. Grades, 15 had 10 ounces per ton almost, right? So it's a little bit much higher grade material. I wonder, lots of questions about that. I appreciated the pictures of the core in the deck here. Possible to compare a little bit. It looks like a lot of quartz in that hole 15 that was off the charts at 10 ounces per ton there. And I wondered if you thought the quartz in this hole 1801, it seemed to be somewhat similar just from the pictures that I saw here.
It has similarities, yet it also has differences. Let me just go to that page.
Slide 16, I believe.
Slide 16, yes. If you look at the historical intercept, 03-15, the vein looks a little more calm, like
Yes.
it hasn't been mangled or mashed. Whereas if you look at our intercept there, you can see all those like squiggly dark bands and lines and things.
Yeah.
You don't see that in that original historical intercept. So I think the veins are different, and it could be that 1801 is just more structurally complex. Like it's just had a longer structural history, and things have gotten a little more stretched out. But there was a good competent core there, and
Yep.
despite being in a structural zone, and as you can see, I mean, just look at all the red circles. I mean, I stopped counting at like 50 seconds. I said, what's the point? And, I said, I'll let the assay do the talking, and
Yep.
yeah, it came back a wonderful intercept. 12 ounces over 4 feet, and that's pretty.
Look at that! No, sorry, I my mistake. Yeah, I didn't realize that you had a higher grade over a greater width than the 2003 hole. Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, and based on core angles and things, it's about 80% of true. So it's we didn't drill the thing down dip. I don't
Yeah.
I don't believe anyway. But like I said, the next few holes will be important because they'll be we'll be probably just taking steps to either side of this and trying to see if we can figure out its orientation. We have done a camera survey, actually a televiewer survey of this hole, and I think 3 others that we had finished at the time on the western zone, and that could be quite useful in helping us determine vein orientation and stuff, because it's actually a real time thing. It shows you how that vein is crossing the path of the hole, so it can tell you if it's trending to the west or trending to the east or to the north or to the south. So and we should have that report any time now, actually. So
Wonderful. Well, and that, to cross-reference that even against surface work observations, boulders that you may encounter here or there, you may start to see things you recognize.
Yeah, well, certainly there's boulders there that we haven't seen in core yet, which is kind of significant.
Wonderful.
And we see variations in the chemistry of the veins as well. Like some have high silver and stuff, and that's one thing that hasn't been put forward yet. We have additional geochem on that hole now, and there is considerable silver and some base metals with this as well, and that'll all be reported with the next update on the rest of the assay. So yeah, it's quite interesting, and like I said, multiple targets.
And this trenching program that was done at Moosehead, I really liked that as well. The photos of that, and zoomed out a bit, and then the up close, detailed mapping that you guys appear to have done with identifying the dip of some of the stuff exposed at surface, and then mapping out where the quartz veins appearing. I wonder how much kind of channel sampling, surface sampling was done along those exposures.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up because that trench was actually excavated by Altius in 2015 after they cleared the air of the old agreement and reacquired the property. There had never been a trench exposing the mineralization at Moosehead prior to 2015. Believe that, right? After all those years. So Altius selected an area based on relatively shallow overburden, 4 to 5 meters thick, and good drill holes, the western zone, and basically exposed that what you see there in the picture in 2015, and that was the basis for the structural reinterpretation that was done by a gentleman from Ireland, Dave Collars, a very highly regarded and respected structural geologist. So he came over and did the preliminary mapping on that, and as well as logged several of the old historical holes, and they actually carried out a televiewer survey as well, which helped him basically see these things in real time. And so it was through all that work that they were able to come up with the theory that the gold's best grades seem to be in structures trending east-west, which is perpendicular to what initial thoughts were. The main three faults I described earlier all run basically north. So all the drilling was done to test those in an east-west direction. So if you're drilling east-west and your targets are lying east-west, you run the danger of missing them, right? So maybe some of those holes of the past that didn't get anything just passed between two veins, who knows, or more.
It is very apparent. I'm looking at one of the plan maps again, and all the holes on the east of some of those fault lines are really just in the same angle. Things kind of change a little bit up to the north there, maybe going a bit more westerly, and on the other western side of one of the faults they're pointing more southwestern. But no, you can fit an elephant in a pretty small space, isn't it?
Well, in particular, when you have good grade, you don't need millions and millions and millions of tons, right? You just to have a significant gold deposit. But if you go to page 9 and you look at that plan, you're right. I mean, you see all those basically east-west trending holes. So the one that sits under the pond, the big red ball you see there, that is historic hole MH0315. That is the 278 grams over 0.45 meters. It's one of the few holes drilled in that orientation that actually hit, significant grade. In fact, by and large, the more successful holes have all been drilled, more in northerly, southerly, northeast, southwest fashion. So, and that was the basis for our program at the western zone, right? So, so we have 12 more holes left to come. The majority of those are from the western trend, and but no other drilling we did around hole 1 for now. So we wanted to wait to make sure we had all the tools in the toolbox before we go at that one. And it will be a priority, obviously, in phase 2, which should start not too far down the road, actually. Late September. By the time we get things back in shape there and ready to go.
Well, if financing is available, you've closed one recently, and ready to work year round. So
yeah, well, 3 weeks ago I had $500,000 in the bank, less the program I just paid for, and with 2,000 meters planned, that would take me dangerously close to to zero in our bank account. So obviously our fortunes have changed significantly. Wow. And now we can certainly attack this with a bigger program and maybe even a second rig or something like that. So like I said, it's all happened so fast that I need some time now just to put it all together and figure out the next program. But
you're doing it.
It won't. I won't have any problem coming up with 5,000, maybe close to 10,000 meters for phase 2.
No, I wouldn't expect that you would. Thank you. Congratulations. That's great. And I have to ask so there was one hole that was targeted on this area, and the other, I believe you said 12 holes where assays were pending.
Yep.
Where are those targeted?
In the western zone, like I said, we only drilled the one hole in the area of 1801. We decided to step back and not do anything foolish and try and chase it right away, thinking we had it figured out, and end up drilling in the wrong place or whatever. So the rest of the outstanding holes are all from the western zone or just off of the western zone. So no other results coming unless you want to count the additional geochem we're going to get back, the silver and stuff like that on hole 1.
Okay, and the change in orientation, and that's where you were talking about, around 0229, around 0230, along. That's where all those other holes were collared.
Sorry, I didn't get that.
So the 12.
Yeah, MH0229. You mean those ones? Yeah.
Yeah, it was over in that area with those other 12 holes.
No, actually, it'd be down more towards 0231 around there, or 01-14.
Okay.
Where it's real busy there, to the west of the hit in North Pond.
I see. Yep.
That's the west trend there. See, and but you, just looking at that map, I mean, you can see there's lots of hits there that basically have no drilling around them, right? So
yeah.
And I'm not convinced, that we won't hit that historic intercept in hole 03-15 yet either when we do more work, because that's out there somewhere.
Yeah.
Where did that go? And like I said, we hit a dike where we thought we were going to get it, but if we drill a little further, up dip or a little further down dip from it, we should get it, right? If it's, obviously.
Well, and you called it 1801. Was it the first hole, or was it the last hole, or these other 12? How did they compare in terms of timing and?
Well, I had 2,000 meters to drill, and I had 15 holes on the permit. So I decided to drill, and because 1801 was the deepest at the time planned, I said, well, I bet if I don't drill this hole first, I'm going to run out of meters before I get to hole 1801. And so I said, I'm going to drill this one first, so I know I'll have that one done. And so that's what happened.
Wow.
So, we hit the best hole in the first hole, and some people tell me, it's just too bad you had to do that on your first hole. Now every other one has to be the same. But
no, those people don't understand what you're doing. most people
special hole there. So I mean,
well, and most people would advise against entirely all of the undertaking to begin with, let alone the risk you entailed taking it right to the edge there. But that's it's tough times in the markets again right now, and you have to be bold.
Yeah, you do, and that whole location was partly defined by local issues, not issues, but because there's rules around drilling around water bodies and stuff like that. So we had to step back 30 meters from the side of the pond, and it can't be. Your cuttings can't run into the to the drainage system there.
Yep,
so
of course.
Probably not where I ideally wanted to put the hole, but it was the place where it just sort of went, right? And anyway, the rest is history.
Any sense of downhole kind of deviation, or do you think you really know where it went down there?
Well, the hole stayed straight,
Okay.
But with just one pierce point, you can pivot anything around that, right? As you know, so it could be flat, it could be up and down, it could be, on a 45. That's why we need to drill a couple of close holes there, like 25 meters or maybe even a bit less than that.
Yes.
Just to make sure we know where it's going, right? And so the first holes are going to be kind of cautious, and but I'd rather hit it than not,
Well, and I agree completely. I think that's the right way to approach that drilling, and if people want exploration upside or more new discoveries or whatever, there's surface work to be done. You talked about the boulders and stuff, and some of the lines that I've seen you put over, or that are put over, maybe I guess by Altius, and how much surface work have you guys done?
Well, we just went straight to drilling, right? It was clear to us that this was a drilling program. There's no exposure, see, Peter. There's nothing to see on surface here. It's just boulders and dirt, right? So, because Altius has done quite a bit of that, and obviously their success from the trenching they did do, it's now backfilled, well, unfortunately, but that's one of the rules here. You have to backfill your trenches after a year, so we can't see it ourselves. But certainly the core and photographs, certainly record it in a very vivid detail as well.
Would you do any soil sampling yourself?
Maybe if there's open-ended anomalies and things like that that needed to be expanded upon, certainly more prospecting and things like that. But I think now it's because even if you trench, you're probably still going to drill anyway. So why go through that step and the process of permitting that work and just go straight to drilling? It's
Well, that trench work that Altius did, it looks like it was pretty productive in terms of understanding what's going on down there.
Yeah, they did, yes. And if we hit a new zone that's close to surface, yeah, we just might, right? I can't comment on the holes that are coming, but we may not be done with discoveries.
Certainly, that's what it is about, and this kind of a deposit, I think, or what could be here, it could be giving you surprises for a long time.
I hope. I like surprises.
Yep, indeed. And East Alder, that one was another that really jumped out at me. I appreciated the property map there, and the structural setting really interested me.
Yeah, well, East Alder was basically a project that kind of saved us, really. I mean, we were down and out. I mean, we had like $10,000 left in the bank. Actually, $8,000 when Altius made the announcement in the fall of 2016 that they had found a project that prospectors had brought to them. They had uncovered some spectacular gold grades, 49 grams over 4.6 meters in channel samples. I mean, that's spectacular, and that zone lies less than a mile from our. So we staked some ground. Not that particular block. We got that block later, but because of that announcement, a whole bunch of people started looking at Newfoundland, and we were trading for a cent. In fact, I was working for somebody else because Sokoman didn't have any money, right? I got a call from the exchange one day saying, "What are you going to do? When are you going to put out a news release on your stock market activity?" I said, "What are you talking about?" I was down in an area where there was no cell phone coverage, right? And he just happened to catch me when when I was driving back to St. John's, for a break. And I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Well, your stock is up like 700% today." I said, and anyway, so I figured out what happened. I mean, we had staked 120 claims. I called up our CFO and said, "John, how much money have we got?" He said, $8,000. I said, "Okay, I'll do the math. That's 120 claims. I can stake 120 claims." So I did. And this guy in the States, this letter writer, picked up. I guess he was following the play with Altius and noticed. We had acquired some ground there and chatted us up on his podcast, and next thing you know, we're 13 cents, and we were able to raise $300,000 or $400,000 and kept us alive, right? So anyway, so we acquired additional ground after that because of the funding, which included the East Alder project, and there was no previous work done on it, so we basically did the usual. Wow. Prospecting and soil sampling, and we come up with 14 trenching targets that we have yet to get to. So I'm hoping to get some movement on that this fall if I can get it all arranged, and maybe make a new discovery down there. It's just up the road as well from 3.1 million ounces at Valentine Lake. It sits on the same structure. Yeah. That one. And actually, if I may say so, Valentine Lake is actually a discovery I made back when I was a younger lad, working for BP Minerals at the time. Yeah, wow. I found the first gold there. Yeah. And
well, that's wonderful, amazing to hear, because I wonder, what was that discovery like? Was that surface work, or was that?
Yeah, well, actually, historically, they had done some soil sampling down there, and they came up with a series of anomalies in an area that kind of looked odd to them. There
Yeah.
were no volcanic rocks because BP were looking for base metals, and so anyway, there was intrusive rocks and sediments and stuff, things that they weren't really focusing on. So they sent me down and an assistant for a few days. I had to fly down in chopper and get dropped off and picked up in the evenings. And our second day down there, I was walking along the side of this pond, and there was this little knob out in this wet, swampy area there. I actually had to get wet to get out to it, but there was a piece of, when I got out to it, there was a little piece of quartz I noticed sticking up out of the moss.
No.
Oh, with the first hammer stroke, I broke open the rock, and there was a chunk of visible gold staring at me, and I just fell down. And so then X number of years later, it's now a 3.1 million ounce gold deposit. So,
That's amazing. Yeah. Well, I love to hear about you and a pond again too, right? You have to go out to the...
Yeah, funny thing about the water, eh? And well, I like gold, and I don't know, it seems to like me too, I think. So.
And I wonder if it's not something about going where other people won't go.
Well, that's it. I mean, there was no previous work down at Valentine, very limited prospecting, and certainly the soil geochemistry works really well in Newfoundland. The soil profile here, generally, if you get a soil anomaly, you're close to a bedrock source, and it's one of the primary tools people use here to find gold. And
and the till too,
right?
and the lake sediments too. Oh boy.
Oh, if you and actually thank you, because that's a slide I'm actually going to introduce into the presentation, is the government regional geochemistry for the Moosehead area. It shows up like a blistering fireball, right? Right on the Moosehead property. I mean, bango, right?
And you were able to stake that after Altius let it drop.
The whole belt. I mean, it's just lit up with and there's gold showings, right? Because that's why the geochem is there, right?
Yeah. And you guys and Sokoman staked that property. You didn't have to option it from Altius or anything.
The Moosehead, no, that's an option deal. We actually they became our largest shareholder until recently. I think Mr. Eric Sprott is now our largest shareholder. No, we had to give them. The deal was to give them up to 19.9% of our outstanding shares and spend $500,000 in a year. We had a year to spend basically from the time of the handshake. So for 7.2, I think we gave them about 7.2 million shares. I could be off a little bit, and they already had some warrants that they inherited when they absorbed Callanan Royalties.
Oh wow!
Yeah, they they were our largest shareholder, and and they're now our second largest shareholder, and they're still a very significant partner. I'm good friends with everyone over there.
Yeah.
And
wow.
And Eric, of course, is our largest now with 13 million some.
Great support that he brings too. It's very important. And the Callanan story, what an interesting one there too, that just kind of appeared and then was gone and has changed into other things.
Yeah, and just a little bit on that, in 2012, when the iron ore space was pretty hot, we actually made a discovery in the Labrador Trough, which is where all of Canada's iron ore production is coming from. We made a discovery, so then they decided that they wanted to have a little piece of us, so they financed us $1 million for, I think it was 14 million shares. It was a 7-cent deal, and warrants as well. So we had, like you said, you take the money when you get it, right? So we did a deal with them, and they wanted to basically have an NSR, a royalty, because that's what they are, Callanan Royalties.
Yep.
So that went on, and so we did the work, and they had their shares, and then we did the rollback. We did in 2014. We did a rollback, 1 for 10, or 10, 1 new for 10 old. So they got cut back to 1.4 million shares, and then not long after that, Altius ate them, right? So
yeah.
So they inherited what they had, what Callanan had invested in us. So that's how the relationship with Altius started. And obviously since then, obviously our deal with Moosehead. And once we spend 500,000, and I think I will, that property is ours. It's 100% ours, except for a 2% NSR on the property. There's no further cash payments or share payments due Altius. It was a great deal for all parties. And they're pretty happy with their investment. I think it's helping their bottom line, but they're a big company.
It's amazing that it comes back to Newfoundland too with Altius.
Yes, well, they're very proud Newfoundlanders, all of those guys, and
they certainly are,
Brian,
for good reason.
Brian certainly is a champion for Newfoundland, and
credit to the industry entirely.
He has. He's carried our sector on his back, for years, and still here. I mean, they could have gone anywhere, but they have to a certain degree. They are more of a global touch now, but certainly. Last year they made a new discovery here in Newfoundland, significant base metal and silver mineralization, and they just did a big deal with Newfound Gold, a private company that's going to go public.
And the things in Labrador too. There's some prospectors out there working on some exciting ground.
Well, we got Mr. Sean Ryan down here now, right? I mean, he's moved out east, and I think we all know Sean's success, in the Yukon. So he's a good guy to have in your backyard stomping around too. So I mean, he's put his stamp on a few things there in eastern Labrador and in the Trough. There's actually gold potential in the Trough as well. But he also staked quite a large swath of ground on the islands, along the Valentine Lake sort of trend area, and he's helping us along too with his. He's private, but I mean, people know he's here.
Well, thank you for mentioning about the iron too. I wondered, right? And that picture on the last slide of the presentation deck there.
Oh, the iron ore stuff, yeah. On the very last slide, yes, the folded rocks. Yeah, that's one of my pictures from Iron Horse. And
yeah, so just to confirm, that is the Iron Horse project.
Yeah, it is.
And what are we looking at in there? Is that banded sediments or something else?
That's lean iron formation you're looking at there, and chert and stuff like that. So it's part of the sequence of rocks that hosts. It's not high grade mineralization, but I just thought the fold was kind of neat, just showing structure.
And
but
this
page
is the
24
kind of
presentation shows the geophysical targets that we were looking at, and the discovery hole was 354 meters of just about 28% iron, and unfortunately for us, timing wasn't great. As you know, timing is pretty important in this business. The iron ore market was starting to flag, and the day we put out the news on that intercept, the stock actually went down. So
isn't that amazing?
Anyway, but it's an asset. I mean, it's something that someone else can take and run with if they want. I mean, I don't know what we'll do with it. We could try and option it off or monetize it. There's also some uranium potential on the property, which is initially why interest was in the area for uranium, believe it or not.
Right.
And some rare earths as well has shown up in some of the samples we've collected. So, and someone was actually sniffing around that a couple of weeks ago that I have to follow up with and see if they want to do a deal or whatever. But
and I've heard.
So.
Just to say that I've heard about these rock units that trace, and we see the map right in the deck showing the ancient locations before everything moved apart. And this picture on this last page of the slide deck, this is an example of one of these types of rocks that you see over in potentially in the UK and beyond. Is that fair to say?
The Labrador's geology is a little different. It's more of a mainland. It's more of a North American type geology. It's attached to the continent, the main continental platform. So to get the real Irish and the British Isles stuff, you need to be more onto the island and the central part of Newfoundland. As I mentioned, Newfoundland was once an accordion, open and closed, with the East Coast rocks attached to Africa. The west coast of Newfoundland attached to North America, and the middle part basically being the mobile belt that like a series of Japanese volcanic islands, sort of that sort of thing with the same similar type of mineral deposits. Actually, Buchan's is a Kuroko type of massive sulfide system, which of course is named after a type locality in Japan, right? So very, very high grade, but yeah, I mean, for the British Isles connection, you need to be focused on the island.
And I was thinking coal seams. That's what I was trying to put my finger on and try to not being a geologist, but you're fascinated by all this stuff and trying to keep it all straight.
Yeah, we're not blessed with a lot of coal here in Newfoundland, like Nova Scotia. Although that basin does touch the southwest corner of Newfoundland, and there were some small coal mines actually in Newfoundland back 100 years ago, but they weren't successful. They were small. They were all chopped up with structure, and they were just legends now, basically.
And just to mention as well regarding Mr. Eric Sprott there, a speculation from myself, thinking about Novo and Australia and the very ancient idea that's kind of at play geologically there in terms of the model, the deposits and such. It was very nice to see this description of Moosehead and Newfoundland and all this, tying back to Gondwana, and it made me think that Eric Sprott must be in for some of these very deeply rooted, geological exploration ideas, potentially very, very large gold deposits associated with them. Wonderful.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. When we first spoke on the phone, I was actually speaking with Sean and Colin, and they said, "Would you mind if we pipe Eric Sprott into the call?" And of course, I just about passed out, right? I said, "Of course." I mean, who wouldn't want to talk to the gold, the gold master, right? So, okay, so I'm about to talk to Eric Sprott, so my mind goes numb, right? And one of the things I thought about at Moosehead early on was, well, what's this project like? So I was looking around, and a few years ago, I was fortunate enough to be in Australia for a few weeks and looking at some of the big mines in Australia and Olympic Dam in particular. So I arranged for a field trip on my own at a mine called Fosterville. And at that time, it was a struggling operation with some open pits and things like that. No one knew what treasure lay at depth there at that point. And because the geology there is similar age to Moosehead, right? And almost identical, in fact. Same age rocks, same sort of structural history. And so anyway, I got a tour, and I was able to get in and have a look around some of the pits and stuff, and got some pictures and a few rock samples and things. And never in my wildest dreams ever thinking that I'd have anything on my hands that would be remotely, possibly even similar to it. And so anyway, when getting back to the call with Eric, so I said, I think it's a lot like the mine in Australia. You might know at Fosterville, right? And then the big hee-haws, right? The burst of laughter came out from him, and he said, "Are you kidding me?" Right? I thought I met him or something, right? I didn't know what was going on because I realized who he was. But like I said, when my mind went numb after I realized I was going to talk to him, I'd forgotten that he was chairman of Kirkland Lake Gold, and of course, that's their flagship mine, right? And he said, "You're kidding me," right? And anyway, so so that was funny, and he still laughed at it when I actually went and met him last week in Toronto, which was wonderful. A 20-minute meeting went an hour, right? One-on-one practically, and it was so exciting, and he's so keen, right? It's he knows what he's doing, right? I hope.
Well, it's one of the first materials that I ever saw from him was published by Sprott maybe in 2012, 2013. And it was a collection of all the letters that he wrote between maybe 1999, 2001, somewhere in there, and maybe 08 or 2012, something like that. It was over 10 years of letters, I believe, about, to shareholders about gold and what was happening in the world, and all of his newspaper clippings, things as they were happening and his comments on them. And to go back and read that as one body of work, Sprott published it, as a PDF, 250 pages long.
Wow.
was
Wow, cool.
that was a big introduction to the gold space for me. Or always knew the bits and pieces of the stories and things, but to really, read that as a single piece of work was just inspiring.
Yeah, for sure. No, I mean, this is like a blessing. I mean, this doesn't happen every day, to companies our size. Like 3 weeks ago, I was driving around with the office in the back seat of my pickup. 4 file boxes, right? And now
With
I
and
do have an
looking at,
I do have an office at home, right? But I mean, when I'm on the road or out in the woods, like Moosehead is about 4 hour drive west of my home here, right? I live just
yeah.
outside St. John's, and
Well,
so I
you
carry
pushed
around
it,
everything in the back seat as a pickup truck, right? So
pushing it right to the edge too. I'm grateful for you telling me about, you taking the company to the brink financially, and it's scary to hear that wasn't even the first time that you've done that, Tim.
well, like I said, if you spend enough time in this business, generally you get to see things a couple times, and
Yeah.
this is special. I mean, this is really nice, and I hope and I see a lot of happy shareholders. I mean, I get a lot of email, saying glad I held on and way to go and all this kind of stuff, and that's important, right? I reach out to all shareholders. They call, text. I respond to every one of them, and they were saying they like that.
No, it's very important, and really the audience for this stuff most of the time is small enough that you can do that, from your office in the truck cab.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
Yeah,
things might have changed, and you might be in another league, the ball game here now, where that might not be possible anymore.
well, I might have to update and upgrade my software and my computer. So, yeah, there'll be a few changes for sure, but
Well,
not
Tim,
too much.
I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me so much today. It's very grateful.
Anytime, Peter. Thank you.